While Star Ocean 4 was announced in 2007, the real story begins in 2008, Microsoft having received a less than warm reception from the Japanese in response to their Eastern release of the Xbox 360 threw a truckload of money at some big names in possibly one of the most misguided deals in gaming history. Microsoft's hope was that companies like Square Enix and Bandai Namco would betray the core JRPG audience and force them to buy Xbox 360s to play the upcoming high-profile title Blue Dragon or the next installment of franchises like Tales of and Star Ocean. The big companies did betray the fans, of course, but the plan didn't work as well as they'd hoped. Sure, the JRPGs topped the Xbox charts in Japan, but the Western release of these games was met with total apathy. Western Xbox owners were apparently far too content playing their shooty-bang America fuck yeah games to consider trying out a JRPG, and others, like me, who absolutely adored Star Ocean, could only laugh at the idea of a JRPG on Xbox, and knew that the home of great Japanese games would always be the PlayStation. Then, in 2010, the proper version of Star Ocean 4 was released on the PS3. It contained both English and Japanese voice acting, a choice of 2 UI styles, and an extended soundtrack, which were all included in the Japanese version. All of this on one disc instead of a ludicrous 3, which had to be changed when travelling between different planets. It was also bloody awesome. Star Ocean 4 is a prequel to the first game in the series, and opens with a background of the near destruction of the human race from nuclear warfare. The rest remain on space colonies orbiting the moon. Our first of the ensemble cast of protagonists are Edge Maverick and Raimi Sanjori. And by the way, they have the most normal names of all the characters. Part of a spacefaring research team looking for habitable planets for the human race to colonise and rebuild civilization. This makes a nice change of pace from the previous games in the series, as it feels more like you're part of a spacefaring organisation rather than a lone castaway trying to return home. That doesn't mean things go smoothly though, as in the opening parts of the game you explore a planet the team has crash-landed on, and several revelations launch our heroes from their humble beginnings into the epic universe-shattering adventure that follows. Though the story is often presented as a tropey Japanese cheese fest, Star Ocean 4 actually manages to deal heavy doses of intrigue and moments of truly heart-wrenching drama. Each character that joins the team does so organically, and they really feel like they're becoming close friends as their objectives align. This is bolstered, of course, by Star Ocean's excellent private action system, where throughout the story there are opportunities to speak to individual members of your party, gaining or losing affinity with them, and having the chance to unlock secret endings for each character. Anyway, you may think, for instance, that Edge is just a blonde carbon copy of Fate from Star Ocean 3, but where Fate was reserved, shy, and a little awkward, Edge is courageous, outspoken, and passionate about space exploration. Raimi, the main female character, is Edge's childhood friend. Were you expecting anything different? But as his second in command, she knows when to challenge Edge on his decisions, which elevates her character immensely. She also instigates some of the game's funniest scenes through her apparent paraphobia, or fear of perverts. There's also Bacchus, my favourite character. He built himself a robot body to commit fully to the goals of his advanced alien race, which the other characters become intertwined in. He approaches every situation with cold logic, to the point where he fears he's lost some of his compassion. He is the best, but again, Tri-Ace did a great job in writing all the characters, with flaws, despite their initial impressions as typical JRPG archetypes. The writers have utilised expert pacing throughout this lengthy story, with smaller stories taking place on each planet, which become increasingly high stakes, alongside the overarching threads tying them all together. Several tear-wrenching moments bolster the main thrust of the plot, which is essentially an alternate take on the grey goo theory, tying in nicely with the events of Star Ocean 3 while still being simple enough to understand without the added context. The carefully constructed moral dilemmas and grey areas throughout the story lead directly to the forming of the UP3, a cornerstone of Star Ocean lore. It doesn't quite reach the heights of Star Ocean 3, but nonetheless, in revisiting this game, I had forgotten just how good the story elements were. Where Star Ocean 4 really stepped up its game is in having the player actually visit a wider array of planets this time. Fans have frequently laughed at the setting of Star Ocean being a medieval fantasy for the majority, despite the sci-fi premise. This game delivers, not only in its narrative themes, where characters are fumbling in how to deal with an underdeveloped planet in a pre-UP3 universe, but also in a new philosophy to the art direction and level design, which makes it in some instances one of the most striking looking games on the PS3. Bloom, lighting, water effects, and bold use of colour make each planet you visit completely visually distinct, as well as providing a feeling of truly discovering alien worlds rather than a series of mostly Earth-like ones. Attempts were made to make the environments feel more open this time, which was met with mixed success. Whereas Star Ocean 3 felt like it was packed with little details, 4 seems to have a fair few big open fields of nothingness, leading to the pop-in problems common in modern Japanese games. The fauna comes in the form of the many colourful, well-designed enemies, but if there was a bit more flora in a few areas, the underlying ground textures, for instance, may have aged a bit more gracefully. Star Ocean's presentation has always been excellent, despite its somewhat doll-like character models, but Star Ocean 4 is undoubtedly the most beautiful in the series, with its randomised rainbow of menu backgrounds, showcasing anime stylizations of each of the characters. This extends to Motoi Sakuraba's iconic sound effects and music, something Star Ocean shares with its sister series, Tales of. When simply pressing a button on a menu screen can be made this satisfying by sound alone, it makes these games a distinct experience above many other JRPGs of its type. The compositional style of Sakuraba is no exception to this. He uses intense and sometimes eerie synthesizers and tombrally similar electric guitars for the majority of his main melody lines, which are practically extended solo sections with few repeats. The tracks remain expertly grounded, however, with syncopated yet repetitious drum beats and bass lines that often use interesting and complex time signatures that distinguish one piece from the next. As Edge and his crew travel around the various planets of the game, there's the usual RPG fare of talking to people in towns, shopping for various items and equipment, and taking on a few side quests here and there. There are chests to open all over, as well as harvesting points to get cooking ingredients, and mining points for some of the game's rarer crafting materials. The party gains experience for practically every one of these actions, which may seem strange at first, but is actually a stroke of genius and serves a dual purpose. If you're familiar with the events of Star Ocean 3, then you will know that this is probably another nod to the mind-bogglingly meta direction that game took. It's also a tool to balance levels of the entire party throughout the game, considering that only characters that took part in battles can gain experience normally. This means that the player is not punished or forced into a party composition throughout the entire game, just for having a preferred party setup. The game is also highly replayable, and uses separate saves for both your current playthrough and your progress as a whole, which includes all your bestiary entries. These get gradually filled up the more you battle, and once all the intel on a particular enemy has been learned, that knowledge can be converted into a powerful monster gem accessory. The combat itself is going to be the thing that makes or breaks the game for most people, as this is where the majority of time is spent. The action-oriented combat system is not only one of the best seen up until this point, and a massive improvement on previous games, but is also unmatched in accessibility and fun for any player who doesn't want to spend hours min-maxing stats and figuring out each character's strengths and weaknesses. You can, and I have, played as Edge throughout the entire game, picking skills that you find most fun to use that, alongside standard combos, focus on easily juggling enemies in the air, outmaneuvering and confusing them, and drawing fire away from weaker, longer range characters. It makes complete sense that the main character is the easiest to use, and if I'm honest, a little overpowered sometimes. However, if you want to obsess over this game, and I do, it's possible to deep dive into each and every character, setting up optimal skills for different situations, or party compositions playing off the strengths and weaknesses of each character. You can try to master one or all of the 9 characters, each one of them different from the last and complementing different playstyles. They all have a variety of skills and magic, or symbology, that can be chained together using the L2 and R2 buttons. The bigger the chain gets, the higher the bonus damage inflicted. There are also 4 excellent new systems in Star Ocean 4's battles. Firstly, blindsides are now a core aspect of battle, which allow a character to flank an enemy that is about to attack. The enemy has to be targeting your player character, but from there it may lose track of you and will be open to combos and critical hits. Then the rush gauge, which fills up when giving or receiving damage, and when full allows you to enter a powered up state for a time. You can also expend the entire gauge to perform an extended unblockable skill combo alongside the closest teammate. Enemies also make use of their own rush gauges and cannot be staggered when in rush mode, so the main challenge of battle is knowing when to go on the offensive and when to blindside and avoid enemies who are on a rush rampage. The blindside and rush systems both synergize and oppose each other in terms of how you set up your character with the beat or battle enhancement attribute type system. For each character you can freely choose between type A or type B. Type A boosts offensive attributes, and through experience, the character learns skills that make blindsiding more effective, such as being able to evade multiple enemies or performing double blindsides for enemies that are able to counter. Type B is primarily for long range or spellcasting characters. It prioritises defense and makes charging the rush gauge far easier, meaning later on in the game some characters can enter rush mode extremely quickly. The final new battle system is the bonus board, successor to the bonus gauge, and far easier to get your head around. The board has 14 slots for coloured jewels, each indicating one of 4 bonuses, and each time a jewel is added, the bonus increases. These are increased experience, money, recovery, or SP. SP being an extra way skills can be improved throughout the game, as well as what is expended to create new crafting recipes. You earn jewels from performing specific actions in battle, like killing with a critical hit, and lose jewels when a critical hit is landed on you or your character dies. Jewels can be melded together in the sequence they were earned, which means you will only lose half of the jewels in a particular combined colour stack. The bonus board is a fun little addition that incentivises varied playstyles and allows the player to progress how they want to an extent. Let's get deeper into character playstyles themselves, as there's a lot to talk about. I've covered Edge. Next is Raimi, who is a stark contrast. She uses a bow and is best at long range, interrupting enemy casters or supporting more aggressive characters. She has the highest base critical hit rate of any character, and when combined with a complementary set of weapons and equipment, alongside her set of skills which unleash barrages of arrows across the field, can be racked up to inflict massive damage. Limily is an offensive spellcaster, with a few early game healing abilities too. She has an arsenal of unique fire-based skills at her disposal, revolving around her conjured demon dog Cerberus. These attacks can pin groups of enemies down in a staggered state, or deal high damage to a group with explosive force. Equipping her for high intelligence and with accessories that boost fire damage will mean any monsters encountered that are weak to fire can potentially be dispatched in seconds. Then there's Batchus. Oh yeah. Batchus is my personal favourite to use. Despite his size, he can dodge around the field with incredible speed, and is the only character that can do so and also attack. Remy can jump attack, but she doesn't go very far. You can constantly switch between peppering the enemy from afar to a powerful close range assault, and not to mention Batchus's blindside is one of the most effective in that it launches him up into the sky to land behind the enemy. Batchus' skills are equally versatile for both close and long range, and his black hole sphere can pull in a group of enemies, leaving them helpless playthings to be picked off by the entire party. The only character that is not really that fun to play as is FaZe. He is not only the weakest character, but his moveset is rather clunky, and his most powerful attacks are pretty much standard symbology for the rest of the casters in the game. FaZe really lacks a focused playstyle, but at the same time isn't as flexible as either Edge or Aramet, the latter of which is better than FaZe in every conceivable way. Battle trophies make a triumphant return and are implemented far more gracefully in Star Ocean 4. Each character has 100 battle trophies that are tailored to their own skill set and only unlock when you play as them. Cool stuff can be unlocked as you earn these, the best of which, for the hardcore players, is the removal of the level cap, so each character can go up to level 255. As mentioned, on normal difficulty, the average player doesn't have to think about much of this. They can take the game at their own pace and enjoy messing around in combat with their favourite character, but on the 2 harder difficulty levels, some might say this is where Star Ocean 4 really begins. You will find yourself having to utilise the huge variety of supportive items, including stat boosting potions and food that grants effects for a number of battles. You'll have to think more about what you're going to craft and synthesise to bring out the best in each character, for instance boosting Remy's critical hit chance even further, or making sure casters can recover MP. Bosses can pose a huge problem and must be approached with extreme caution when in rush mode. Even if you believe you're over-leveled for a particular area, a boss can come along and utterly devastate an unprepared party. Some BTs are not even obtainable at higher difficulties, just because of the difference in enemy resilience. It's a testament to the depth of the game that these higher difficulties can be overcome by using all the tools the game provides to set up a strategy and party composition to suit each challenge. What remains beyond the combat system is a surprising amount of side content, though the nature of this could be seen as more of a hindrance to the game than anything else. The reason being, every single side quest is as basic a fetch quest as can possibly be, with not much in the way of intriguing characters or locations, beyond what you would have already seen in the main quest. There's an unlockable Colosseum which allows you to take part in special battles and bunny races, and a gigantic endgame bonus dungeon, which is always good to see, but some players might find these side activities so bland that they may ignore them entirely, or even find their experience with the game as a whole dampened. Star Ocean 4's best elements, though, are some of the best in the genre as a whole, and in my opinion it is only surpassed by Tales of Graces, which released later in the same year. I prefer the story and setting of Star Ocean 3 for its political themes and fantastic ending, but in almost every way this game is an improvement. A few years ago I got some major stick for heavily criticising Star Ocean 5. I wasn't just talking out of my arse there. This is one of my favourite series, and after having experienced it for hundreds of hours, I know just how deep it can be. I also recognise that the series has many flaws and could probably make some amazing suggestions as to how the game could improve. Upon revisiting Star Ocean 4, I've surprised even myself at how good this game actually is, and how it's easy to learn, hard to master. This is a JRPG experience that is not to be missed, and I hope that someday it can find another rival. Until that time, well, I've probably got another good 100 hours to put in. See you next time.